Google Mashpee, Mass, and it comes right up, the whole thing, and that's great. You don't even have to go to town of Mashpee. That's all I wanted to point out.
Thank you. So the work is being done, and we're becoming a little bit more visible, because there are so many questions, and we would like the whole project to be successful. Can I just emphasize again to the commissioners to please get information back to Catherine so that the next phase of getting the overview, which is the big picture and in shortened form, on the website so that people will know what's going on and we can move forward with that and have a vote on it at our next meeting. But we need to have your input in time for the May
May 3rd.
3rd meeting, which is when we'll meet with the IT people and with Ray and with town
Wayne.
managers.
And
town
Wayne
managers.
Taylor, yeah.
Okay, is there any other discussion or comment about the website? Phyllis, would you like to say anything about it at all?
I was there.
Yep, she's been doing a great job, and thank you also. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is
Excuse me, you
Yes.
just said something. Our next meeting, May 3rd?
no, did I say May 3rd?
No, the meeting that we have
Oh,
with
no,
Wayne
the
Taylor.
meeting that we're having with IT is
The
on May
committee.
3rd.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so we need your input on the overview and any
Before
of the
that, yeah.
information that we'll be sharing with IT.
Yeah.
So your input will be
Yeah,
very
it's this
valuable.
thing.
Okay.
Strikeout, it's hard to read.
Moving on to the next section in old business, we wanted to talk about the discussion of Phase 2 sections to be targeted. So who will be handling that conversation? Joe, you have been having some conversations, and we need to have your input. And we'd like to hear what you have to say.
Have you all read the memo I sent out yesterday on the completion of Phase 1 and future phases?
Somewhat.
Let me expound for a moment on the purpose of that. First of all, I haven't seen any definitive plans on finishing the connection of people to the first part of Phase 1. That's line number 1 in the processing plant. We still have room for 400 and some, let me get the right number, so I
429.
won't repeat the wrong thing. The initial system, as it's designed and equipped now, will start processing 429 units. Since it has a capacity of an additional 430 units, or around 400 units, we need to identify where they're coming from. Arbitrarily, 2A, that has been laid out previously, is the completion of the work on the east side. That goes down to Pirates Cove. We've got the pipe all the way down there to Simon's Narrows Road now. So all we have to do is connect it for about another 3/4 of a mile, and we're in Pirates Cove. So other than that, when there's only 156, I think, or 136 in Pirates Cove, 156, we can take on something else. I have been a proponent of doing the job the way it was originally designed, and that was to clean up the eastern area first, particularly the Mashpee River, and all of the units that are on the riverside areas. And the reason for that is, as the gentleman that spoke a little while ago, if you got a house next to the river, you're one of the initial polluters, and your pollution goes in at 100% value. If we talk about the 2B area, which is from here over to Santuit, there's a bunch of homes in there, we've got to get there eventually. But each one of them only put like 30 marbles into the water. By the time they get to the estuary where it's pollution, it's probably only 10 or 15, okay? There's an attrition being so far from there. So if we put all the pipes up here, it's not being efficient to clean up the river. It's only getting half of the nitrogen they would if we went down and pumped Wind Chime, Sea Mist, Deer Crossing, Sandalwood, or Roche Plaza. Those are places that are closer to the river and probably have more units in them as well. So what I would like to see is that at the end of phasing in this first line, and then as our next objective, and you'll see if we fill out the sheet on the attached letter, the next stage will be $200 to $300 million. All right? It'll be 4 times bigger for the in-ground work than what we're doing right now. What we're doing right now is establishing a system, firing it up, getting the bugs out of it, and we need to be ready to do the next stage 2 years from now. And that means a bunch of things have to be put in place. First of all, we've got to cost it. We've got to define it, then cost it, take that reference to the selectmen and say, we need a thing at another town meeting for $250 million or whatever it is. And they'll reject it, they'll all panic, okay? But we'll have the numbers, and we can show the areas that we would put it in and what the cost is to put it in, and we can beat on them until they finally accept it and put it onto the town. The town has to approve the next stage. So we've got to do a nice bit of homework here, have it ready so that it's been evaluated and accepted among the management of the town, meaning the select board and the other departments, prior to next year when it will have to go onto the town's agenda. Okay? So that's the reason for the sewer data and next option memo. Anastasia has a lot of the numbers. She can fill in the service units into A, B, C, and D. And it'll be pretty obvious, for example, that if you look under 2B, that's the area between here and Santuit Pond, it's very expensive to get the piping in that area because it's a large area, has a lot of homes in it, and then it's a fair distance from the plant. So we may not choose to do 2B at this stage. That would be part of the next larger stage. So any questions about it or the logic of it or any suggestions how we can get the town ready for the next phase? It's important and we should be discussing it.
Joe, I'm thinking about how many of the developments you just mentioned have their own sewer treatment at this point that's specifically for them. And they reduce the nitrogen down to a certain level, and so far it's been acceptable, but we now have to worry about even that amount going into the bays. So there's a difference between taking out nitrogen from a home where there's just Title V type of system, and then taking the nitrogen out of a already collected system like Wind Chime. And could you go in and describe that a little bit?
Well, let's go by the numbers,
Okay.
okay? In order to get to, like in Wind Chime, 156 houses, okay? We'd probably have to lay, what do you think, Ray, 2-3 miles of pipe?
Now, you're comparing that to a development with maybe a quarter acre per
No,
lot?
you would, I'm comparing to answer your question
Okay.
direct.
Yeah,
You asked a very valid question. The valid question is, why should we go collect from a condominium complex when we could go into a neighborhood that's beside it?
yeah.
Now, the reason for that is we have very limited funds, and we will always have limited funds in what we're trying to do. But what we're trying to do is reduce the nitrogen in the river, okay? And that has to come in front of everything we think. Whatever we do, it has to address the one problem we have, get nitrogen out of the river, because the state is going to legislate it. They're going to say we have to take 75% of the nitrogen out of the systems. Systems, plural, whatever it is, doesn't matter, homeowner, condominium, or the commons. You've got to get 75% of your nitrogen out. If we go to like Wind Chime, 156 units, got to put one pipe in there at our expense. And we get 156 people that even if their system is 50% effective, and it's only half the nitrogen per unit that we would get in a neighborhood, it's still more nitrogen for less dollars if we pick up that condominium. And it also services more town residents than we could for that amount of money. All right, so we could compare it to Sandalwood, and I've been having this argument with Ray from day one, because Sandalwood was in the old original plan. Well, Sandalwood's gonna be 3 or 4 miles in there, and it only has 113 units at 5,000 to 10,000 per unit per house. We can't afford to lay the main in there until we have a huge amount of money and a huge amount of efficiency. So I've been arguing with Ray that we ought to leave Sandalwood out for now. Scoop up the low-hanging fruit, okay? That's the most efficient way to get a lot of nitrogen out of the river in a short period of time and with the first investments of the community. Because then we'll be measured by our efficiency in cleaning up the river. Now, the people over on the west side, I know what I'm saying is we're gonna concentrate on the river. The reason why we're concentrating on the river is that's where most of our pollution is, and that's where most of the waste pollution comes from the town and goes down the east side, not the west side. We've got to address the west side also, but that's only maybe half the problem that the river is on the east side. So we hit the river on the east side hard, and we pick up these condominiums and large units. In the first phases, we'll show progress to the state. We won't get in trouble with them on their cleanups. So that's the reason why I'm laying it out this way. And I hope I answered your question. It's the
You did.
amount of pounds of nitrogen that you get for the dollar you put in, and the effect of where it is. If the nitrogen is out in the bay, I don't care. Once it's got there, there's nothing we can do about it. And by the way, shellfish do not solve the nitrogen problem. What they solve is a step down. It's the photoplankton that we're feeding with nitrogen that the shellfish then filter out of the water, and they clean the environment, they clean the appearance. They haven't done anything to get rid of nitrogen, okay? They eat the vegetation that has nitrogen in it, and they put it into their shells. But the nitrogen on the way down generates all of the stuff that makes the water look so polluted and makes it impossible to see the bottom on the river.
I have a couple of questions, Joe. This would then mean that the collection system would come down Great Neck Road South, right?
Eventually, we have to have a Great Neck South collection system, yes.
Okay,
But we need 2 things. We need, one, a connection to the plant, and second, a pumping station to get it up there, because that's an area that's lower than where the transfer station is. It's 74 feet there, and it's about 50 feet at the Commons.
okay. My understanding, when we spoke to, or when the engineers from GHD presented last week, our last meeting, that there was going to be an evaluation and review of 2A, so that we'd have the information that you are saying.
Yes, but Anastasia hasn't been in, so we don't have it. She's going to get it to us
So we're going
next
to
week.
get it when we need it. And that
Next
would
week.
be,
The minute we get it, we'll send it out.
and this will then begin to help to answer the questions that you raised,
Yes.
or provide solutions.
Well, I'm looking for her to give us information on Wind Chime, Seamus, Deer Crossing, Sandalwood, all of them. And if
And
we put
Pirates
that
Cove.
in as a
Pirates Cove, yeah.
infrastructure cost, we can then determine the cost per unit that we're picking up, which will give us a way of evaluating the different areas by the cost per unit.
Ray, do you have a comment, or do you want to respond to that? So this is a discussion by the engineer.
As I had mentioned previously, most specifically at the last meeting, this actually presents a great opportunity for the commission to be able to reevaluate all of the phases of the town and reconfigure them. That only will get done every so many years, okay? And then it almost becomes final, and then you're bound by it. So I think it's a really great opportunity. I also indicated that by this summer, meaning beginning and during the course of the summer, you will have all that data, all right? And not just for that area. Their task, meaning GHD, through the notice of project change, is to rephase the entire town based on the 2015 plan. So therefore, there will be changes in some of the various phases. And they necessarily need to have costs, loads, units, and everything accompanying that information, which is going to come to you. One thing I would say about a comment that Mr. Lyons just made, where him and I don't necessarily agree yet on something like Sandalwood. I think, in my view, that overall the commission's going to come to the right conclusions, all right? And I would still stand by that with respect to Sandalwood. But in moving forward, the one word that I had changed in that
Rivers.
webpage, okay, was rivers, okay? And Joe had almost exclusively spoken about the rivers, okay? That's how important they are. So recognizing that, you really have two. You have the Quashnet, you have the Mashpee River. Both of them
Santuit.
are very bad.
Santuit.
Make no mistake. So there's a lot of work to be done, east and west. But I do agree that you build upon your major capital investment, which is phase one. That's where your cheaper costs are going to be for the next phase, okay? So it's very logical if you think about it in that context. So I do realize that you're waiting for some numbers, but I would not necessarily want to, speak for GHD at this time, but I do know that we're coming up on May, and I had said the summer, and summer starts in June, okay, you're going to have the numbers fairly soon. So, all right?
So I would
Yes,
just.
thank you.
It's just ask the next steps. I mean, you said ID the work, then to cost it out. How will we cost that out?
If you fill out this attachment, it would be pretty obvious the way it falls out. We will want to apply the least amount of money to get the most amount of impact. And that
Okay.
amounts to,
And-
if in the next stage it's 200 million, we get another 3,000 people under the system. Some arbitrary number, I can't tell you
Yeah.
what it is, because it depends on where they are and how close they are to the river, how bad we need to get them cleaned up. It's just a question of numbers. It's not even science, it's numbers.
Agree.
We're gonna have to sewer somewhere between 4,000 and 7,000 people in this town. And we don't know.
At least, yeah.
Let's say we get to 4 quickly, but we've concentrated 2/3 of it, like it should be, on the east side, and we've cleaned up the river. Okay? Dynamite.
Okay,
It'll be a shining star as far as Cape Cod's concerned.
I agree.
Better than that, we may get, better conditions for borrowing more money to get the west side, potentially build a plant over there.
When we fill out this attachment, what time frame is this? I'm just trying to come up with the schedule.
It's
For what?
probably gonna take us 2 years to figure the next big bunch, because we still have to
No,
stand up this plant and get it running. That's what we're doing
You
now.
talked about convincing the select board. So at some point, we have to.
I didn't understand.
You talked about, we have to get to the point where we work on convincing the select board, right?
We have to
That
have all
work
the
need-
data and make a
Yeah.
recommendation to the board that they go to the town meeting and ask for a very large sum of money. Now, the amount of money and the amount of, will be driven by the amount of properties that we want to take in, and we've got to have a defensive position that we've evaluated all those properties.
I understand all that completely. What I'm trying to do is, in my head, get
Okay.
an idea of what we have to do before May 2024 town meeting. So,
Definitely.
and kind of a schedule, what we need to work towards.
How quickly we need to
Each
get this
piece,
information.
each pieces of the puzzle that will get us to
Yeah.
May 2024, is what
Yeah.
I'm saying. What frame? I mean, that's a year from now.
Well, in the next 4 to 5 weeks, we'll have the information to fill this document out.
Okay.
And that'll give us a rough draft of where we've got to go. Then we can focus on it and get the finite information and pass it on. I think we've got more than a year, with far more than adequate time to be ready in May of '24.
Okay. Okay.
But that's why I wrote this now. I want it started.
No, I agree.
And Anastasia is committed. I did get a message back from her on the phone that she'll get us this data
Great.
this week. So she's got a copy of this. And let me ask, is Jeff Gregg still involved in any way?
I mean, he's still with us as a you know, as a reviewer, but
That could
Anastasia,
mean a lot of things.
well, Anastasia's kind of taken over doing the
Understood.
everyday work, I guess. so.
Understood.
Yeah.
But I just asked if Greg was still involved in any way.
As a reviewer, not doing
Yeah.
the day-to-day stuff.
Okay.
Okay.
Because he was perhaps the one individual at GHD that had the best overall comprehension of, A, what we're trying to do and how we went about laying out the whole plan.
Yeah, so you may not see him here, but
Yeah.
he's still, you know, involved as we
Okay.
work through our stuff now, so.
Does Jeff and Anastasia work together on this issue?
Yep.
Great.
So is he one of the engineers?
He was the, what would you call him, lead engineer in GHD's presentation to the.
Yeah, when
entire plan.
Jeff was, Jeff's a senior engineer now. When he was earlier in his career, he was doing what Anastasia's doing now, kind of in charge of kind of doing all the calculations and so, yeah. But Jeff's with us and kind of in a different role now.
Okay, thank you. It's a good clarification for the new members of the board, so they know who the people are that we're working with. Thank you. I have just one other question. One of the things that came up in our conversation about the website review was looking at the large building, Laurentide, that is the assisted living housing unit. We understand is hooked into Mashpee Commons. Would that
Yes.
be considered as a part of, would we want to consider pulling that over?
No.
So we're going to just leave it where it is and where, as
Why
part of
would we?
Mashpee Commons?
Let's think, first of all, what I said, the only thing you have to remember is removing nitrogen, and anything else is subject to that. They're down at 3 now because they're using.
Oh,
the
they're good
Commonwealth.
then?
They're at
Yeah.
So
3.
we can't help them.
Yeah, we
We
don't need
can't
them.
make them any better, and
Okay.
we can't charge them any less, I mean.
Got it. Just a
there's nothing
question that came up.
positive. Yeah, good
Okay,
question.
fantastic. Okay, are there any other questions or comments about the next step? So we'll be waiting for some new information, and then we'll be able to start planning towards next phases.
Meredith, Ray Jack had something.
Yes, please. Mr. Jack.
One quick comment. The issues are complex yet simple, all right? Nonetheless, there's a number of different aspects to it. So what I've done in the past on major types of issues like this as they affect the town is to look at it from a dimensional perspective, all right, from a dimensional analysis perspective. So for something like this, it's going to have its scientific dimension that has to be factored in the equation, financial dimension, how you're going to pay for it, societal dimension, how you're going to have the community receive it, political dimension, all right, what's the political viewpoints overall. All of those have to be in line. They really do, in order to form a successful and productive relationship amongst all the parties. That's why I always hate to see divisiveness. I think it accomplishes virtually nothing. It's much better to try to bring as many people and as many of these dimensions into the fold, and I think that the outcome is generally going to be a favorable result for the commission, for the town, all right, for everybody. So I just wanted to kind of mention that there's a lot of moving parts, all right, that ultimately do have a role.
Great, thank you. So the next order of business would be to have a report on the sewer project construction update from Mr. Ray Jack, our engineer, town engineer.
Sorry, I sat down too soon.
That's okay.
Okay, this would be your normal monthly update with regard to a monthly report, like specifically, this is going to be for March, even though we're late into April. But I always usually combine the two. So for financial purposes, your statistics and finances are going to be based on that March timeline. But for the rest of the project, okay, I try to bring you up to speed as far as where we are today, as much as possible. So, start out with some of the financials on the project. This is the Water Resource Recovery Facility and original construction contracts, $27.9 million. We adjusted it by including the remainder of the tanks. So the current value would be $29.5 million. As of the end of March, it's considered 8.3% complete based on value, not based on time. It's over a 2-year project. So there's 611 days remaining. So across the board, you're going into your, let's see, it's the 8th month of construction from October, the beginning of October of last year. So you're about one third of the way through all of these projects, the plant, north and south on the collection systems. This is the graph showing the same statistical information. 29.5 was the adjusted budget. The original budget was 27.9, and then you've already paid out $2.43 million. Then for the
Because
north,
Construction's ahead of schedule.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, which is true on 2 out of the 3 on this, and I'll be getting to those in just a moment. So the north project was the smaller from a bid perspective. So bid value was $5.024 million. Adjusted value was the same because there were no subsequent awards. It's considered 33% complete. They're well ahead on the northern area, and you're going to see that on a couple of the slides that I'm going to show. So far you paid out $1.66 million, and that represents 33% of the value of the contract. 500 days remaining, so this one's shorter than the plant. This is just a cash flow chart, and the yellow line is riding above the other lines. It is diverging, but that is because they are so far ahead on the project. And Route 28, as odd as it may seem, was the most difficult part of the whole collection system project, and I'll talk about that separately. But those costs were also included under this contract, all right? So they're well ahead on all of that. Then for the southern portion, which is going down to Simon's Narrows and south of Route 28, original contract was $9.8 million. Adjusted value was the same because we didn't have any change orders associated with it. It's almost 13% complete based on value, and it has more time remaining on it than the north because it's a larger geographic contract area. This is showing the cash flow for that. So it's a little bit slower, if you will, than the northern contract. So the actual cumulative expenditures are slightly less than what the projections were. So here's the northern project area, and this is where it stood in March. So all of the yellow lines that you see here represent mains that were already installed. So you have Carlton was completed, Swain right here, and then Sea Oaks over here. Now the services haven't been put in on Sea Oaks yet, but they will be. Swain's already got the services, Carlton does. Sewell over here, the maintenance services are complete there. So where it'll be going now that they're off of 28, and I'll be talking about that in a minute as well, is they're going up here on Butler, and then Drew is the last remaining street in that area on the northern side. Then they'll be coming down here, and it doesn't show on this map very well, but this happens to be 28 down here, and then you have Asher's Path. You can see that you have some mains that are supposed to go in along Asher's Path, High Sachem, and some of the other roads in that area, so that gets done as well. This is the southern area. So there's Orchard, this is Quiniquisette, this is Mashpee Neck Road down to here, this is Simon's Narrows, that's where the lift station is, that little black dot. And where they're going to be going now, or where they are today, is here on Shipwreck. So it's the last road there. Then we have Ship's Anchor and Porthole. That's where we'll be going after that for May. And I still love all those roads with the shipwreck thing. And I was thinking the other day when I drove down, Ship's Compass. I said, if the compass had been done right, then they wouldn't have had a shipwreck at the end. I just love those names. So this is where we were. On the left was where we left off with March. These are the equalization tanks, and they had the rebar down at that time on the left-hand picture here, and then they were starting the vertical rebar for the walls to go up. Since that time, and you can't see it in the picture on the right, but the slab, concrete slab, you can see the edges of it here, have already been poured, so that's already in. The vertical rebar went up, and these are the concrete forming panels, and on the next slide I have a photo that shows how they're assembled on the ground. But they're being lifted into place right here by a crane. And the ones on the inside of the rebar, you have to have it on the inside and the outside to contain the concrete to the rebar. The inside forms have already been installed. This is installing the outside forms, getting ready for a concrete pour. So this is where we were back in March with the process building. So here they put 16 inches of stone down. The underground piping was completed within that building footprint area. And then this is where we are today. So at the last meeting, when I presented this, the slab had been poured. At least 2 of the pours were complete when I showed it the last time. There was one here, one across the top, and then one down the middle. So all of the pours are complete on the slab, and now they're putting up the rebar going vertically, as well as the concrete forms here for the foundation walls that'll be constructed. This is how they assemble them on the ground. So this would be a complete panel that had been assembled, and you can see the little connectors, these little things here, running along that rod. Those are the little connectors that join the pieces together. Then they lift it up as an assembled unit and put it in place. So this is where we left off for March as well, before they started doing Route 28. For the collection system north area, the biggest thing they did up there was working on the 8-inch mains going into Sea Oaks. Those mains are in. The 2-inch LP was put in, and they completed the manhole frames and covers on all of Carlton, Swain, and Sewell. That was already completed. So now, this is still part of collection system north, but this is Route 28. They had 11 crossings here, and I know it's a little bit difficult in the photograph to try to make this out. But anyway, the yellow line here, that's the 10-inch high-pressure gas. Right, and then right above it is the 6-inch low-pressure gas. It looks like kind of like a brownish pipe in the background there. Right here, you can see a little piece of the metal, and the rest of this is just scale material from the soil. That's the 16-inch water main there. And there's also an older abandoned 6-inch gas main that was cast iron in this vicinity right here. But they did 11 crossings, and by crossings, meaning going under all of these utilities. There were 9 crossings for service laterals to be installed, 1 crossing for the force main at High Sachem, and then 1 crossing up at Orchard for another force main. That kind of work is extremely difficult and dangerous to do, and they did a fabulous job. I'll be speaking about that in a minute too. So this is a little bit better picture to show you. This is where a service lateral was going to be going in. So this is the street area out here, and this is a residence driveway area, And then, of course, the house would be up in this vicinity up here. So they need to run a pipe right under all of that right here. So there's the gas main, the high-pressure gas main, there's the low-pressure gas main, and then this here is the water, I'm sorry, that's not the water main. This one's the old gas. The actual water main is this piece right in here. All right, it hasn't been completely uncovered yet, but that's 16-inch water main. So up on Orchard, this was their last day on the job, which was the day before yesterday. And this is up at Orchard and Route 28. They were putting the force main in. So this is the SDR 21 force main laying up here, ready to go into the trench. The truck over here is actually sitting in the middle of Route 28. And then on the next photo here, this section here, they already had the force main in. You can barely see the tip of the force main, that little white dot right there. And then this pipe up here will be put down in there and connect into that force main. But that force main is coming up from Mashpee Neck Road.
Is that a stone bed or a cement bed?
Stone,
Stone.
stone. And then this one gives you a little bit better perspective, all right? So this is standing on Orchard and looking north at the intersection itself. So of course, in the background back here, that's where you go down to Asher's Path. But that's the same trench that I showed you as they're starting to button it up. These were just a couple of photos of Route 28, only because it's so rare that I get to stand out there and not get hit. I felt like taking a few shots, all right? But nonetheless, this is their paving operation. This is the machine that they use to do their temporary paving. This temporary paving installed, and they did that for the entire course of Route 28 that they were working on. They put in just under 1,200 feet of main out there. And of course, this was the detour that we had. The blue line represents the work area that they were working in between Orchard and High Sachem. And it's done. What I have to say at this point, I'm not someone who's easily impressed. I've worked with a lot of construction projects over the years. It takes a lot to impress me. You have some highly skilled, very competent, very professional crews working out there with Robert Allen. The police details were phenomenal. They did a tremendous job in managing the traffic. At best, I would have to say traffic might have represented a slowdown. I've drove it several times myself, and I had a difficult time trying to figure out where the traffic was literally being held up. So all things considered, I think that the project was done extremely well under what I would consider to be difficult circumstances, especially having to go under all of those other utilities the way they did. And make no mistake, they're all deep trenches. It started out as 17 to 18 feet down at High Sachem, all right, and then worked its way up. But nonetheless, that's not an easy job to do. So I'm very grateful for how well it went. Yes.
I think we all owe you a well done because you had a lot to do with this success. Thank you.
Well, no, thank you. This was the most difficult part of the job. It really was. And now it's done and it's out of the way, and I think maybe people can enjoy their summer a little bit. So.
We'll do it again when we're going to go up.
We'll do it all
See,
over again.
Yeah,
He had
we'll do it
to,
again.
he had to do that to me, because we do have to do
No,
it. We do have to do it again for final paving.
You don't know what for sure is happening, but it's happened in the other room. There's a lot going on here, and to have Robert Orr's job quality.
Yes.
Level of their quality is super. And it looks like we're off to a good start on the transfer station as well.
Yes. And these are just a couple of pictures to show you what some of the final touches look like. This happens to be Carlton looking south down toward Asher's apartment. That's right around the bend there. You can see that they've loaned and seeded both sides of the roads that they had disturbed there. This would be looking north on Carlton Drive, heading up towards Swain. That greenhouse on the corner is right on the intersection of Swain. So they, in my view, they have a high quality work product. They work well within the communities that they're working in. They consider them as neighborhoods, very respectful of the disruption, the disturbance, the noise, the dirt, and everything. They clean up every day, all right, at the end of the day. I guarantee you, they clean up every road they're on, so.
This is just the patch. We're gonna
Yes.
Finish it with a new top coat.
Believe it or not, a lot of people don't realize that these roads are going to be full-width paving. All right, they're going to have new roads at the completion of the project. So it's not just a new sewer. And ironically enough, at least in my career, one of the things I've always said is that the only thing that really people remember is the last thing you did or did not do. You can do a wonderful job installing the sewers. If the road looks terrible when you're done, that's all they remember about it. And it puts a bad taste in their mouth. Easiest and best thing to do, give them a new road. So that's where you're going. For the collection system south, this was the last thing they did before they started 28, this particular crew. This is Quiniquisette here. This is Mashpee Neck Road running this way. So they came up to the intersection. They had to put this 3-section manhole in. So right now they were getting ready to lift it. And then here they were actually setting that base manhole into Quiniquisette. What's coming up? So for the plant itself, they're still excavating for the process tanks. They're going to be some of the next things going in. Still have a lot of underground piping to install. The MLSS is the mixed liquor suspended solids tanks. And another word for that most people don't hear or use is sludge. They're the sludge tanks, all right? Then you have pouring foundations for both the process building and the equalization tanks. When I say foundations, they're really the foundation walls. For the north area, the Route 28 mains are done. They were done in April. So for May, you're going to be looking at Butler Lane, Drew Lane, and then they're going to jump over onto High Sachem. For the southern area, Shipwreck Drive, Ship's Anchor, and Porthole. And then they'll continue on after that, for the other roads that are there above that. And that was it. Hopefully it was painless.
Are we going
Catherine?
to have a construction schedule for the month of May?
I'm sorry?
Will we have a construction schedule for the month of May?
Yeah, we always go with a 2-week schedule from a
Okay.
contractor's perspective. It's very difficult to plan beyond that, and especially when they were doing 28. I got a lot of grief over that. But the simple thing is, they were doing their best to get done quickly, but you can't guarantee that, all right? At the 11th hour, something happens, and boom. So anyway, I wasn't even able to get the schedules up for May. The 2-week schedules
Okay.
won't be until this week because of Route 28. Okay, now that I know they're done, they know they're done, so now the schedule is, for the other areas.
So can we talk about where that should be posted?
Yeah,
Okay.
I have no choice, I gotta go where it is now, all right, but yes, yes,
It's going to be moved.
Yes.
Okay.
all right?
Any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
No,
And
thank you.
I'd love us to go on record to say that the town of Mashpee is very, very, very fortunate to have you leading this team.
Oh, well, thank you.
So thank you very much for all the work you've done.
I appreciate it. I love it, and I think Mashpee's great to work with. You're great to work with. I'm having fun, if you can believe that.
All right. Party.
Working is fun, so.
But you're doing
Thank
a
you.
dynamite job, and we thank you. The same for Robert Orr, and the same for the Mashpee Police Department. And if we can send out a letter of thank you to these 3 groups, we would like to do this. Would the commission agree to that?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we
I'll
will.
second that.
Great, all right, so we will work with whomever we need to work with to get a letter of commendation and thank you. Okay. It makes us all very excited to see this project that's been on paper for so long to finally be mortar in the ground or mortar on top of the ground, and thank you again. All right, so the next item on the agenda is to review information about Phase 2 options. I don't know what more that is beyond what we talked earlier. That we'll be waiting for additional information, and we'll look forward to that, and then we'll start working hard to review the information so that we'll be able to get the next phases, so that the timetable that we talked about will be moved forward, so this can get to the select board. I just have one comment that I wanted to make on additional topics. Our annual report was accepted. It was I had sent it around to each of you and needed assent and got assent from the majority of the board. So, and thank you, Ray, for reviewing it as well, for the technical information. So it was going in, I believe that there was a lot of work that was done in 2022 and needed to be recorded, so it was. And so, just so that you're all aware that that's been done and it's being recorded.
Thank you very much, Meredith. I know that was like pulling teeth, so thanks.
Well, you all have your teeth still, so
Yeah.
we're good. So are there any other comments, questions? Are there any other topics that anyone would like to bring up or discuss, or questions that we need to consider?
Hearing none,
Hearing none?
I move we adjourn.
And do we have a second to that? Okay, so,
Second.
and the vote for adjournment?
Aye.
It's unanimous, and thank you again for